doing some. I just couldn't go back to sleep. Okay, so I started doing some more research about this whole concept, which I've told you and your audience before, that I'd been given some clues that Lucifer not only was real, but that he had a real problem. He suffers from multiple personality disorders, and he also has inadvertently he's infected himself with these mental parasites that he accidentally created. He and his immediate
his cohorts,
spacefaring crew. Yeah, well, and I had told you before that the information I got was from a book called Christ Consciousness by a guy named Norman Paulson, who was a friend of my father. Now, in there, he claims that back in the 1950s, he was contacted by benevolent human extraterrestrials who told him this story about how Lucifer had ventured into some weird forbidden zone, like a black hole, and he was so badly traumatized, he and his crew, that they became insane. They went mad. And I told you I thought maybe that somehow that he was infected from a source external to our universe. But after I went back, last time we talked, I went back and reread that information. It says very clearly there that when they were in the forbidden zone, wherever that may be, and they went insane, that is when they accidentally created these mental parasites, which have various names, such as demons or archons or jinn.
All right.
Okay, so, and those things are extremely real. They're very dangerous, and they're very prevalent in affecting our consciousness negatively.
So you do not believe that Lucifer was a fallen angel?
Well, okay, let's be clear here. The word angel just is Greek. It means messenger. I don't see him as a messenger. Before he went mad, he was a builder of worlds. He and the people that worked with him, they were
from another planetary system or something else.
Yeah, it's not the 12th planet or 10th planet or whatever. It's not Nibiru. He literally came from the Orion constellation. He comes from a royal family. You can read about this in Sitchin's work. He's the one known as Enki.
Okay, all right, that's who he is. All right.
Well, that is who he is. I know this really. I'm sorry. Like I have to apologize up front. I know this upsets people when I say this, but it's just the way it is. Okay. And also, I'd like to clarify. I do not hate or fear Lucifer or Enki or whatever you want to call him. The guy has so many different names. It's a little bit absurd sometimes to try and keep up with it. But he is a real person. He's also a shapeshifter. My understanding is he's an amphibinoid. A humanoid that is amphibious. We know this from the descriptions of him in the Persian Gulf. He's known as Oannes, coming up out of the water and giving mankind civilization, as it were.
What does he look like?
Now here's the problem. As a shapeshifter, he can look like anybody that he wants
at any time.
At any time. So a lot of people have met him and didn't know it. And even I didn't know it, George. That's the other thing I should clarify. When I spoke to you 2 years ago, I said that radiant being of light that I met on the mountain in Malibu in 1985, I wasn't sure who that was. All he said to me was he's the Father.
Did you think it was a godlike figure at the time?
Well, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
Who wouldn't?
Yes, but I was being attacked by the mental parasites that I encountered earlier that day when I was working security at the beach in Malibu. And so when I was up on that mountain praying for help, and when he showed up looking like Jesus, I thought that he was there to help me. At the time, I had no idea that was Lucifer, and that he was the one that had created these parasites. And basically, the reason he was confronting me is because I was interrupting his agenda.
And he knew it.
Oh, of course he knew it. Yes, of course I didn't know it, and it was really confusing to me. And even when I spoke to you 2 years ago, I still didn't know that was Lucifer. It was only shortly after our conversation that a lot of things clicked into place, and they're still clicking into place, which, in a way it's good. But I got to tell you, having this information, I suppose, is a blessing, because I think it's important that we know it. But it's also kind of personally, it's a curse, because I can't get away from it. I mean, I wouldn't choose to do that. At this point, let's just put it this way. It's a really big responsibility for me to report this accurately, because it is affecting everybody to some degree.
Why would Lucifer be in Malibu?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's what I wondered too. But apparently, he considers this entire planet to be part of his empire, his illegitimate empire that he started. We don't know. I'm guessing over 400,000 years ago. That's my estimation. At least that's when he came here and turned this world from a paradise planet that his mother and brother had first established essentially as an experiment. It was going to be, if it went well, it would have been a blueprint for the rest of the Orion Empire. But when Lucifer went mad, and he eventually found his way out, he and his crew eventually found their way out of the Forbidden Zone, and they were like rabid dogs. They'd gone completely insane, and they were dangerous. He made his way home back to the court of Orion. His parents said, even though he was firstborn and he was the next heir to the throne, the kingship of that empire, that galactic empire, they said, there's no way that we can't allow you to ascend to the throne because you're mentally unstable. And he said, well, then the heck with you guys, I will start my own empire. That's where the war in heaven started. And eventually, it wasn't his ego, it was his mental state. He's broken. His spirit is fractured.
How has he been able, Robert? How has he been able to live so long? I mean, you just mentioned 400,000 years.
Yes. Well, okay. We're talking about divine beings, gods, goddesses that are shapeshifters. They are interdimensional. They're not just extraterrestrial. And the reason we don't live very long here is because of his tampering, his genetic modifications that he's done to us to cause us to be have an expiration date.
It's like a time clock in us or something.
It's a way of controlling us. He does that to us intentionally. Not only do we have our physical life shortened, but when we pass over, there's this soul trap that he has instituted that causes us to reincarnate back here. They trick us into agreeing to come back here and still be under their control, because part of the problem is, like what he did to me in Malibu that night, was he erased my memory of most of that night. And he does that to us every time we reincarnate. They reinforce their control over us by erasing our memory of the previous lifetime. So it makes us much easier to control.
With what we know of as Satan, is that Lucifer?
Yes. No, that is... Oh, God, here we go. Very controversial. No, my understanding is that is his son, Marduk. He's also known... In the Egyptians' pantheon, he was known as Ra.
What a great family this must be, Robert, huh?
Well, no. Here, come on. Let's be fair. These are divine. I know it doesn't make sense, okay, but I've had to come to grips with this. My first reaction, George, when I finally realized who I was dealing with, I was pretty upset. You can imagine. Nobody likes being lied to.
Right.
But one of his titles is the father of all lies. He's not just doing it to me, okay? And he's incapable of telling the truth. I mean, I don't know. Have you met anybody ever that has multiple personalities?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Okay. They're very difficult. They're incoherent in the sense that you never know which personality you're dealing with, and there's an internal conflict going on. So they lack integrity. So here's the thing. I told you before, evil is an infection, and I can prove that now. I am in the process of making a video about this, and it's also in my next book called The Malibu Chronicles.
Well, you may be right about that. It may be an infection.
Well, I'm actually sure. I found the evidence over the weekend. I'm really jazzed right now, George. I mean, I'm excited to talk to you and your audience, but let me tell you, this is not just a casual conversation we're having. I am going to force the issue. There's no way they can deny this any longer. You know, the reason they hide and do what they do covertly is because they know that we're not stupid. And at some point, if we figure this out, that we will take action individually and collectively to liberate ourselves. And they don't want that. They actually need us on some level because they have become parasitic and predatory, and they feed off of, as I told you before, they feed off the negative energy that's released through our DNA when we hurt ourselves or others. This is why they're constantly provoking us, right? Dividing us and provoking us to do harm.
Robert,
just imagine you're standing face to face with this God, this madman, the fallen angel, whatever you want to call him, and he is affecting my thought process.
Tricking you, right?
Trying to trick, and he did. He tricked me for 29 years, had me under the influence, or at least believing that he was a God or the Father. And so at this point, I just have to jump ahead, give you a further update. When I spoke to you in 2014, what I knew at that point, that he would be returning under the false pretense that he was here to save us. And this is going to be sanctioned by the UN and the Vatican. The reason he's coming back is because this is to complete the final stage of his agenda currently, which is to take a contingent of human beings, upgrade them to a cyborg level through AI, nanotechnology, nanobots. Those few humans that have been so-called upgraded are going to be part of a strike force that he teleports or sends through a portal directly to the court of Orion to attack on his behalf. So in other words, they'll become the point guard of his force. Now, my understanding is this was already tried back in the days of Atlantis. That's what he was doing a lot of that genetic experimentation for, and that's the main reason his parents, his family, wiped out pretty much all life on the planet, specifically his doing. The manipulation, the monsters that he had created then were wiped out. And as you know, I know a lot of your audience knows this too, America is considered the new Atlantis. At least that's what Francis Bacon wrote, right?
Right.
So it is what we are, what we've become, and this was all by design. None of it happened by our own doing. The conversation here, he's really good at manipulating people, us. You know what else I found out about him? He thinks he is the father of modern mankind. He also feels he's our savior. From his twisted perspective, he feels that because he genetically modified us to be what we are, that he is our father. He also feels because that he saved some of us, a remnant of his original creation here, his monstrosities, that he created here, he reestablished that here. He supposedly saved us from the flood and ignited that whole thing, reestablished it. So, like I said, when he said he's the father, from his perspective, he actually believes that.
What's his bottom line, Rob? What does he want?
Well, I don't think I answered what does he want? He wants total control. It's really weird about people like that have no self-control. They feel like it's easier to control others. My understanding of psychology, I was only a B student in university when it came to psychology, but what my understanding is that people have this disorder. If they can't control themselves, that when they control others, at least that's some degree of control that they have. You know, it's an illusion. It's not accurate, but for them, that's better than nothing, right?
Well, that's so true. That's so true.
Well,
but it's easy for people to get confused, misread what the situation is with this, as you did for so many years.
Oh, yeah, but see, it's done intentionally. Yeah, look, he didn't just fool me. He's fooled all of us to various degrees. I mean, there are some people that know who they're serving, and they do it willfully because they get rewarded for it.
But he's got cohorts. He's got followers.
Oh, he does.
Are they all insane, too?
Unfortunately, yes, and this is what I was saying about finding proof. This is called mass hysteria. On a one-to-one level, look, the mental health profession knows this. They know that they can find no physical cause for one person actually causing another person to becoming psychotic. But they see it. They've observed it under clinical conditions. So they know that there's a way that we transfer this, but they can't identify it. The Catholic Church would call this possession. The medical profession calls it schizophrenia. Now, both institutions are trying to do something about it, but unfortunately they're not being successful. So if we can't fix it here accurately, you got to understand that there's efforts going on behind the scenes by these divine beings, the ones that are still divine, that are uninfected. They're doing their best. The problem is, and this was explained to me very carefully, that we tend to, because of the circumstances, we tend to be easily tricked into agreeing to do these things. Now, if we agree, I say, okay, look, yes, I want to live forever as a cyborg. I want to become smarter and stronger and compete with AI, etc. Okay? If I agree to that, the divine beings, even though they may disagree, they may say, God, Robert, that's a really stupid idea. I mean, why would you do that? But they can't prevent me from doing it because that would be a violation of my free will. And they still abide by that.
Okay, now on the good side of it, the godlike figures, right?
Yes.
What's happening on that end? I mean, is there a battle going on? I mean, how long is this going to continue?
Yeah, well, until it's resolved. And it is, okay, so when we think of a battle, we think the good guys and the bad guys, black and white, and there's a lot of shades of gray involved here. The good guys do not operate in the same way. They don't just go around killing people and blowing things up. That's not how they do it. It's very different. It's a lot of times it's really subtle, and they also have to get our approval. Like I was just describing. So it's a lot more strategic, I feel. It's a lot more subtle, but it's a lot more powerful and effective in the long run. I told you one of the contingency plans I saw when I asked them, how are you going to resolve this? Because honestly, it boggles my mind. How do you heal that many people from a condition that is so pervasive, so systemic? I mean, literally, somebody else actually called it this, a cancer of the consciousness. This is really bad. So what I was shown was that there was a wave of energy that would wash over the planet sometime in the future. And it turns out there's actually a few people that have seen this coming. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I am very confident that what I saw in my mind's eye was that this actually could happen sometime in the future, that as this energy wave passes over us, that our DNA would, instead of being so shut down, that it would suddenly be fully active. I mean, somebody said that we're like meat modem. It's a weird term. But okay, so think of it. If most people, their DNA has been shut down, switched off to some degree, they're on dial-up. Whereas some of us occasionally, we have these awakenings, epiphanies, whatever you want to call it, revelation. That would be like suddenly having broadband data flow, right? And you're like, whoa, what is all this? It's like it's just a flood of information, of stuff that's really there, but it's like we just can't quite see it right now because we've been so dumbed down or switched off in many regards. So that would be the switching on of us, and I think at that point people would have a much greater clarity as to making good choices, or at least clear choices about what is it that we want. Do we want to be free? Because, remember we talked about this before, like people that are in prison for too long, when you let them out, they feel uncomfortable. They want to
Of course, they want to go back.
Because they feel very uncomfortable when they're outside the prison system. So they can't reintegrate to society. So I feel that the same thing is true for a lot of people here. If given the choice of moving off of the prison world here, there are some people that are going to choose to stay living under those conditions, and that will be honored by the divine beings. Which when I first was shown that, I thought, no, that can't be right. That's not really a solution, is it? And they made it clear to me, it has to be that way.
Robert, is this a great deception, in your opinion?
Which, of course, the whole thing is an illusion. This is a good segue. Now, are you familiar with the cube on the North Pole of Saturn, that hexagonal shape? In other words, it's something that the Kabbalah and even the big black square that the Islamic people go around. In other words, it's worshipped in multiple religions. The Israel, the Islamics, the Masonic Society, they all worship this Saturnian black cube. What that is a hyperdimensional tesseract. It looks like a cube, but it's a portal to another dimension. That is set up on Saturn as an extension of the larger original mother quantum computer tesseract that Lucifer created. Not only did he create his own empire, George, he created a matrix, a false universe. It's very small compared to the known universe, but it's where we are.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because Elon Musk says, of course, Elon Musk, the PayPal founder, and Tesla and everything else, he says we're living in a false matrix computerized world.
Yep. And